What do you want to go at? What do you go as on the internet? Like, what name do you have? Do you just use your name?
Yeah, I'm fully public with my name, Greg Dowd, and then my handle in the Hive community is making stuff, and
Yeah, I
so
saw that.
yeah, so folks know me as making stuff, and but yeah, I'm public about my name and everything.
All right,
So yeah,
cool.
Greg
Yeah,
or
I always ask because you never know.
yeah, so
I don't want to accidentally give away people's information.
yeah, I understand. Yeah, for sure.
Uh, yeah, he should be here any minute. He's probably eating. Penguin, you there? Uh, he's muted.
Yeah, I think I'm live streaming, so I got
Oh, right
this.
now?
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody to the live stream.
Yeah, welcome. Yep. Yep.
Did you tell them who we are and what we're doing? You can probably do that while we're waiting.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah. So, hey guys, welcome to this is a crossover episode with Meadows and Makers podcast. My name is Greg Dowd, also known as Making Stuff on the Hive in the Hive community on the Hive blockchain. So, trying out this live stream for about the second time I've done this, so trying to figure things out. But today we're sitting down with the guys over at the Agora podcast, who are also talking about a lot of the same stuff that I like to get into, talking about solutions and what we can do to move forward and disobey the state and use counter markets and action and agorism. So to build the free market and the agora. And yeah, today I'm joined with SEK. You go by SEK Megora is your handle?
Sec Megora. Yep.
Sek Megora.
Hmm.
And then his buddy Penguin. Is so this is going to be like a crossover episode. So we're just kind of I felt like we could kind of just share ideas and kind of talk about maybe some solutions towards creating a more voluntary future.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's definitely what we're about over here. Um, the for all of your listeners who are listening, possibly listening now, Agora the podcast is we try to mix it up a little bit. It's we do some theory, just to kind of get the fundamentals out, and then a lot of solutions, and also a lot of like bridge building. So people that have maybe not quite the same ideas, but very similar ideas to we do. We try to we're very non-sectarian at the podcast. It's more about people who are doing stuff and working together and that kind of stuff.
Excellent. Yeah, man. I mean, that's what I try to get across, in a lot of the podcasts. I keep people kind of updated on the stuff that I'm doing. A lot of the stuff that I'm doing right now is related to our Freedom Cell group, but I've been working on my own self sufficiency for a while now, and so it's you know always projects, about 1,000 different projects, but there's a couple of them that I thought that we might be able to expand upon. One that we've been talking about back and forth, Sec Magora. The delivery service, the Agorist delivery service, and got a couple ideas on that.
Yeah, cool. I mean, we can save that for the recording, but I actually just sent my buddy Shane. Shout out to the Vanu podcast. I sent him a box of stuff that we've made over here at our homestead, and we traded for some stuff that he makes over at his, and we used it. We used the Agorist delivery system for that. So it was totally about as state free as you can get, as agorist as you can get. So
He-
that
Hell
was pretty
yeah,
cool. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
That's you know, I was listening to a couple of your guys' conversations, and I just sent you the link to the live stream that I got going on right now. If you wanted to share that around, I don't know, with your guys' audience or wherever you want to share it around to, if you want. But but you guys were talking about an idea called the no-tell, I guess, and so that was a pretty interesting talk where. In part of it, you guys were talking about maybe have some like lockers or something like that, and you could do like maybe use them as like a drop point or something like that, or a way to, exchange items. Um, and I thought that was pretty interesting. I brought it up on my podcast, and somebody in the audience suggested that if you wanted to do maybe a drop point, you could buy one of these, passcode door locks, and they make them to where you can like just send out a code through your phone and use it to unlock the box or whatever, as just like a current off the shelf technology that you could throw on a box or something, and you can
Just make a lockbox, basically.
yeah, just make a
Yeah.
lockbox that you give a code to, and then if you got somebody that wants to do a drop point for a pickup or whatever, you got everything all set up for them. You just give them the code, they unlock it, and then it can be on your own property somewhere, and you don't have to be there.
Yeah, I mean, you could even, okay, that would be good for like anonymous drop points, but we could get real creative. It always comes down to like how much money do you want to spend versus, if I'm shipping tinctures and pickles to my buddy, we might not necessarily need a drop point or a lockbox. But if things become more valuable or sensitive things are being shipped, then yeah, we could go with a lockbox. You can even rent a locker, or if somebody's got we could get real creative. If somebody's got a locker at a gym, we could be using that.
Oh yeah,
You could start even using PO boxes. You know what I mean? So, yeah, those are all good. That was Shane's idea, and those are all good strategies for doing. So everybody's safe, number one, but also you're
plausible deniability is what I was thinking.
yeah, a lot of you're secure as well. You can you don't have to meet the buyer, and you don't have to worry about agents of the state so as much. But I
Right.
mean, I you could even if you really so the other problem with like maybe a lockbox is um, if somebody finds it, they know that is something valuable.
Yeah, that's true.
So what I know some people have done is you just take like an old fast food bag and you just kind of throw it in the bushes with whatever you need inside that bag, and it just looks like trash, right?
Yeah.
But whatever you're transferring to that other person is in that bag, and they know it's in that bag, so they just go to that drop point. But anybody else who doesn't know just assumes that's trash in the bushes.
Yeah, it's a dead
Very
drop.
cool.
I used to read a
Yeah,
lot of
dead drop.
Tom.
Yeah.
I used to read a lot of Tom Clancy novels and stuff when I was younger, and yeah, that's totally that makes so much more sense than a lot. I just came in when you said lockbox. That makes so much more sense.
Penguin,
Oh, okay.
he's live
Yeah.
streaming, just so you know.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
right now, yeah. I figured you might. That's when you said you're gonna like. Why would he need? Why would he want a webcam? And I figured that was the only reason I could think of. So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
awesome.
I mean, this is the second time I've tried live streaming, and so I just wanted.
Sweet.
I'm getting better. I'm trying to practice and get better at this. So,
Do you think
Okay.
YouTube is worth it?
do I
Like-
think it's worth it? No, not really. And I don't really like having all my. I don't have all my stuff there. I started through Hive and Steam it. Steam it in the beginning, and I was big into working with the dudes doing IPFS, and so I started my own IPFS server, and I think
nice.
that's really the way to keep the information from being ever taken down. But I hold backups to all my stuff, so
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people talking about IPFS, and It sounds awesome. I just haven't I haven't figured out how to load anything to it yet. But I know some of our stuff is on IPFS. Like we did an audio book, and somebody I know put that on IPFS just so it's out there forever. And but I think that is probably the move. It's you can almost build an alternative internet with IPFS.
Yeah, I mean, basically, people are sharing the files, and basically, so like, if you wanted to have your files, you can basically get on to and create your own node on the IPFS network by sharing part of your hard drive on your computer. And you can even revive old desktops or old laptops or whatever, load Linux on them, and use the hard drive space on the computer to host a node for IPFS, and you can share it amongst the network of your peers, other folks that you can help set this up with or whatever. And those files, are distributed across not only the broad IPFS network, but also the local nodes on each person's computer, from my understanding.
So does that mean you can create an intranet? Like you can create I don't know how to describe it. I'm not a tech guy, but um,
A VPN?
no, like almost a file sharing amongst local people. So
I
there's a
think that
word
is
for
technically what a VPN is. But it's only people use them usually for other things. But like I think that's technically a VPN because that's what companies used them before they were used to anonymize traffic. Yeah, it's a virtual private network. So you have like it's like a private network, but it's going over the same like hardware lines. That's not probably not the right word, but but it's a virtual network of computers in different places going over the I don't know just to be like not so tech savvy the same tubes as the internet, but they're connected through a virtual network. I think that's originally what the VPN was meant for, and now it's been almost entirely popularized as this kind of other thing. And those are technically VPNs, but they're obviously being used for like
another word for it. Like companies will use them. Like it's an
VPN. That's VPN.
It's an intranet. Like within the company, they can all access these specific servers for.
So it's an intranet.
Yeah.
There's a Venn diagram here that we're missing, like where something's an intranet or a VPN. The definitions are a little off. Like they're not exactly the same thing.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's totally. I think it's basically synonymous, but I'm not.
Anyway,
it's pretty impressive. I still have some videos that are connected to those IPFS gateways. Basically, like IPFS, part of it, from my understanding, is that it's just like a way to index information.
Right.
And so IPFS stands for interplanetary file sharing because it's like, how do we move all this information if we're going to go to different planets, I guess, is the concept of it. But so, yeah, these guys have been, building this IPFS network for a while. And I think the backbone of it is something called Filecoin.
Yep. Well, from what I understand, and correct, I'm not an expert by any means, but
I'm not either. I just
Filecoin. So like part of the reason you can surf the web is because you can type in a specific name of a file, and from what I understand, is Filecoin is that name is like an alternative to that naming system that we have on the current internet.
Yeah.
So like it's not the files, but it's how the files are named, so you can go access the files on IPFS. Is that I don't know if that's correct.
Yeah, from my understanding, I believe that's how it works.
Right. When you ready to start recording, by the way?
Yeah, let's do it. I was actually seeing. I don't even have the option. This is like the first time where I've logged in and I don't have the option to do a webcam, but it's usually taped over anyway. But something's wrong with it, so definitely won't be doing that. Not even an option. But it's all good. We're audio only, so
I got stuff behind me I don't want seen. So
yeah.
I've tried this before with Jitsi, and for some reason, if you're running like a streaming software or something like that, I have to shut down my OBS first, then allow the camera because the two programs interfere with each other with the webcam or whatever. I don't know.
Really?
But
Well, I don't have
anyway,
OBS open.
I was able to solve that by opening Jitsi first before starting OBS. So
Yeah, those things are all funky. Okay, well,
yeah.
I got audio. That's all that matters, I guess. So let's do it. You get the audible notification. So what do you want to be introduced as?
You can introduce me as my name, Greg Dowd, and my handle is making stuff on the Hive blockchain.
Okay.
So either
Well,
one.
Sec will be doing that, but I was just curious. Yeah, I was just curious about that. Okay. I guess that's all we need. So Sec will do the usual.
I run a podcast called the Meadows and Makers podcast, and so basically just in that little community on Hive, and I've been doing that probably since I don't know, late 2018, I guess.
Sweet. Well, the usual way we go about this, you'll hear the audio. You've used Jitsi. You're familiar with Jitsi? Probably somebody.
I am, yeah.
You're familiar with Jitsi, right? Okay,
Yeah.
probably somebody is because, yeah. Okay, so you'll get the audible notification that we're recording. I will start my spiel, hand it over to Sec. He'll introduce you, and then he'll quickly introduce you, and then he'll probably hand it over to you at that point.
All right.
Because we always do it, so I'll see why we change this time. All right. As soon as I finagle with this, you'll get the notification.
Sounds good.
Recording is on.
All right, friends, welcome back to the Agora podcast. It's Penguin introducing us as usual to your usual home for agorism, radical decentralization, localism, and anti-authoritarian concepts. We have a very special guest joining us today. Sec, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest?
Sure. A quick announcement before I do. We've got shirts coming for the podcast from Agora Print. Yeah, they're up there. They look cool. I'm very pleased how they turned out. I will be posting images when I get them on our Telegram, Discord, and Penguin and you on the Twitter. And they're going to be $15 in USD, or the equivalent in crypto or gold, silver. And they're in the mail right now. We got them from agoraprint.org, some friends of ours. And so if anybody's interested, hit us up. Today, our guest is Greg Dowd. Greg is a friend of mine. I met him at the Derek Bros activation event. He has a podcast, Meadows and Makers. He's on the Hive blog as Making Stuff. His YouTube channel is... What is it again? The Tinker Tribe.
The Tinker
Tribe.
Tribe.
That was cool. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
And you're on Twitter as Greg Makes Stuff. So he's a homesteader and a YouTuber and a podcaster. Greg, welcome, man. How's it going?
Hey, Sec. Hey, Penguin. Thanks for having me on your show today. And it's going pretty good, man.
And
Greg, real quick, you're live streaming this, right? So where are you live streaming this? Because I can actually post... we'll plug your content again, but I can post a link right now to our Twitter.
I sent Sec the...
Hold on, I'll send it to you.
The link over.
Okay,
Signal.
awesome. Sweet. Okay. All right, cool. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but yeah, I'm going to try to get some more viewers.
So what's your podcast about, bud?
So I'd like to bring on backyard tinkers and folks that are building things and cool projects, and I brought on activists, and I went to Anarchadelphia in 2019 and then Anarchapulco in 2020. So I brought on some guests that I've met there. I try to bring on people that are taking action and actually, doing some cool stuff. They're building things, or they're, moving towards self-reliance. And then, I live stream every Tuesday to our community on Hive through a program called MSP Waves, and which stood for or still stands for Minnow Support Project. But it was a little community from Steemit And when Steemit hard forked, they hard forked it into the Hive community blog platform by just doing a hard fork from Steemit, because Justin's son bought out the Steemit Incorporated, and from the guy that was previously running it, and then they started doing some censorship and stuff on the platform. So the community took the code and hard forked it, and now it's like a totally community run project. So cryptocurrency. So, and it's actually doing pretty good. It's almost, I think the token's about $1 right now.
So what are some things people are doing that you've what are some examples of things people are doing that you've had on your podcast?
3D printing, code. I had a guy, Kodak's. He was doing some 3D printed guns and stuff, and he actually has like a makerspace where it's like a membership, and folks come in and do the memberships and stuff like that. I had a guy on that does long distance. He basically can help you train to do long distance, like sniper school kind of shooting, or like sniper shooting. I've had a guests that do their own homesteads from kind of all over the United States. And then a guy that I interviewed was in Portugal, guys from Australia. I had a guy on my podcast from the old Steemit community. His name was Beat King 13, and he was a music producer and a guy that worked for NASA, and he started building wooden bows in his garage, like actual like long bows. And so like a lot of folks that are doing different things. I've had folks from my local area that do 3D printing and aquaponics, and then one of my friends built a off-grid boondocking Airstream that we talked to him, and folks that do robotics. Had one of my friends on that does robotics. Folks that are doing all kinds of stuff. So, and then when I can't, I get guests on, and when I can't get guests on, I kind of go over the local news, and we cover videos and folks that I think, and information that I think is helpful for other people, to give them some, things that they can do in their own life that can help them become more self-reliant and move in a better direction in their own future. And then I keep people apprised on what I've been doing and what we're working on in our local freedom cells and stuff like that, to kind of, give people an idea of, what I'm doing to try to get there myself.
So, well, let's back up a little bit. What brought you to all this? Let's kind of do a little background interview on, like, how did you get to where you are now in terms of the way you think about things?
Well, you want to know, like, kind of when I started waking up to the world and got that revelation, or what put me on the current road I'm on right now, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you could give us your background story if you want, but more so like so there's people that think as we do, but not everybody is in the same boat in terms of how to get from where we are to where we want to be. So you seem to be more interested in self-reliance, do-it-yourself projects, producing things, more agorist or activities. But not everybody thinks that way. What brought you to where you are now on the current path you're on? Like, why do you think that is a good strategy?
Well, I started to get into, I kind of took that progression from libertarian, and, Ron Paul kind of gave me a different way of thinking about politics or whatever. And then so I did that progression from libertarian to anarchist to kind of like anarcho-capitalist. And then I really liked the stuff that Derek Bros was doing. I always felt like, uh, yeah, I guess it's nice to talk about theory and what's happening to everybody, but like at some point you gotta really take action. And so Derek Bros was a big influence on me, and I think he was the first guy to introduce me to Samuel Edward Konkin III and the whole philosophy of agorism. And once I understood that the free market and looking into history is a way that we can keep the fuel or the energy away from the state, and it was through real action and trying to do as many deals in the black or gray markets as he described, and that you can take the energy away from the state and allow it to just crumble under its own weight after a while. And so I felt like that was the most that was probably the best solution to a voluntary future. Like I went through the phase where I tried to like yell and scream at people. Like I was watching a lot of Mark Passio and basically, kind of getting in folks' faces. But, that doesn't really work because when you go in front of people and confront them, a lot of times they believe that they're on the attack. Or you're on the attack, they go defensive. You're not really going to sway very many people's minds that way, from what I've learned through my own going down that road. And so instead, I'm just like, well, I can choose what I do in my own life, and I choose to live this way and try to keep as much of my energy away from the state and to, not comply and, be as self-reliant as I can, because I saw, looking into a lot of these different things I was researching, I read like, The Creature from Jekyll Island, and was watching like Mike Maloney's like, The Hidden Secrets of Money and all this stuff, and looking into UN Agenda 2020, which is now like 2030 or something like that. And I was like, building this broad picture with all this information I was taking in and seeing that they're going to make it really difficult for folks to live that don't want to go along with this agenda. So that's what brought me to the philosophy of agorism, was that this is probably the most tangible, actionable philosophy to start taking energy and power away from the state. So that's why I'm here. That's what I'm doing. What I'm doing now.
Yeah, I mean, we're right there with you. I agree with what you said, and I would just add that it's so there. When you look at the world and all the problems in it, it's easy to get very negative and reactive.
Yeah.
So you can get very angry and you can shout, and scream and protest and yell at politicians and you're reacting to what is going on in the world. Or you can try to be very positive and proactive, and it generally seems that you end up with better results that way. Like you said, you're number one, you're building yourself up, but you're building, positive relationships with other people, and you're having fun doing it most of the time. At least I do. But doing these little DIY projects and building up your homestead and having good relationships with people and trading amongst each other, and it's a lot. It ends up being a lot easier on your body and mind to do it that way, and rather than being very negative and angry and reacting to how bad the world is. So it number one, it's more effective, and we've said this on the podcast a number of times, but it's more effective. But number two, it's also more beneficial to me or you or whoever's doing it. It's just you're living your life and having positive relationships with others. So it's a lot less stress on your shoulders. You know what I mean? So it works, and by it I mean counter economics works on so many different levels simultaneously that it is the only way to go forward, I think. Um,
I
yeah.
agree. I mean, look at past tyrannical or authoritarian countries. Recently I've been listening to some podcasts with Yeonmi Park, who was a defector from North Korea. And she said basically the way a lot of folks actually were able to get by that weren't in the upper classes in North Korea under the Kim regime is by using the black markets, by trading between other people to the state deems the trade illegal. If you get caught, you're probably going to a prison camp or something like that. But if it's between trading and starving to death, you got to do something. So I mean, that's like one of the methods. And then looking into during before the collapse of the Soviet Union happened, those folks also kept themselves going by building these black markets and trading outside of the state's view to be able to trade for the goods and things that they needed. So I think it's a natural response to an authoritarian regime.
Well, I think that it shows that exchange is natural and is going to occur whenever people have the need for it and have the need to. Some people have one thing, some people have the other. To put it very simply, and it really can't be suppressed, and it can't be not only not can't be suppressed, but it can't be superseded by a planned economy. And I think that's our common theme throughout what we talk about is not just strictly agorism or strictly any one or two um, like ideological topics. It's just straight up we're against centralization, we're against planned economy, we're against political authority, and we can find that common ground with all of our guests. And you can really talk to a really wide variety of people when you kind of come at it from those ways. If you like, a lot of people hit those bullet points, and then but the fact that you're actually, I think that's an interesting illusion that Seth gave us is like stuff we've talked about on the podcast. I think we talked about how important it is to be involved with the production and to make stuff, build stuff with your own hands, see stuff to completion. I just finished Carl Hess's neighborhood technology yesterday, and he actually said that like towards the very end in the last I think 10 pages he was like, yeah, just the ability for workers, they were so much more satisfied like working on a project and seeing it from beginning to completion. And it's just proven that is like way more satisfying. It produces, I don't know, it's your neurological system is made particularly for that, to make things, to build things, to see stuff from like raw material to its complete project. And so it's, I think, also psychologically better, tell me if you agree with this, to actually I mean, this is pretty obvious, to instead of just like be looking at the problems and talking about theory and debating about all the things that are wrong with the world, to actually be doing things and kind of getting that positive feedback instead of just feeling hopeless. You're actually doing and adding in the theory after the fact almost.
I agree. I do agree. Yeah, yeah. It does bring you a really good sense of fulfillment to be able to take something from your mind and envision it and then build it. And I think that we are all creators, and that's where a lot of the joy in our lives can come from, is the act of creation. And so I agree with a lot.
Yeah, Yeah, and really, we're obviously we know what making things from raw materials and creating things, but to be taking things from your like political theory and your political thought, and we've talked about this in the really broad meaning of politics, and to be actually like making something abstract out of that, I think that has the same effect as like building a piece of furniture out of wood or welding something together.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it for me, it's like it was kind of like a switch in my head that just had to go off, and and it was like, well, I like to remain an optimistic person, and probably the only way to remain optimistic is to, I think Derek Bros said at one time was to, don't, not just think about yourself and your situation, but to have that like 7 generational mindset, thinking that many generations into the future and what you're gonna leave behind. And so, a big thing for what freedom and liberty means to me is total ownership and self, personal responsibility. And to be totally free, you must be responsible for everything, including your own defense and your own, you know, ability to raise food, your own shelter, um, all those things. So,
Yeah, and we're responsible for these things, even if we don't necessarily provide things for ourselves. So you probably are on the more like independent, self-reliant side. Obviously, than that, it's kind of like that a frontier mentality or like a homestead. I mean, you're a homesteader, but like the homesteading kind of mindset. But let's say you were in the exact opposite situation. You're still 100% responsible for your defense and for your, maintaining supply lines, whether that means going to the grocery store or what to do in an emergency. And it's like you're not outsourcing that responsibility to someone else, ultimately, like the state, because they don't actually have a guarantee for those things. None of those things are actually guaranteed. And even not from a libertarian mindset, it's like those just things aren't just 100% guaranteed. So, you know, self-reliance can be through mutual aid. It can be through like homesteading and creating your own sources for things. It can be through exchanging, like you said. But I think we try to find the best mix from that, and that's what we try to do when we talk about working with everything from working with raw materials to like creating networks with it between the homesteads.
absolutely, I 100% agree. I guess I really didn't mention that, but I 100% agree that you need a community. You can't really lone wolf it. I mean, I got a little piece of land, and it's like 4.5 acres, and I'm working on developing it, and it's a lot of work, and um, you know having a network of folks that you could call up, and if you're working on a project one weekend, that they could, whoever's available can come out and help you. That makes a big difference in being able to get these certain projects done and get them, you know, to where it's not just sitting idle, but you can actually make continuous progress. So uh, you absolutely need a community. I don't believe that anybody's could make it on their own entirely, like lone wolf. Um, but they do say the good Lord helps those that help themselves. So I think
Yeah, that
everybody needs to have like a solid foundation on their own. And one of the big things that we're working with our Freedom Cell is that like everybody's got their own individual properties, and they're all working on their own self-reliance, but we can get together and trade with each other. Like somebody's growing this crop, and like maybe I have eggs, and like I'd like to have some of that so being able to create a trade network between each other, and uh, even being able to sell things to each other, that somebody's raising grass-fed cows, in our Freedom Cell group. So he's gonna get a list going, and have people ready to get his little enterprise started, so those are some things that I think are important. The community is very important.
Well, first off, put me on that list
Okay.
for that grass-fed
Yeah,
beef.
he's up in Tennessee, so.
Oh, really? Oh, perfect. But yeah, that's something that we've harped on quite a bit on this podcast, and it is community. And it's hard because, we're all individualists and we all want to be relatively self-reliant and autonomous. But so it's hard for us to, to think about community, I think, as individualists, but we have to, because like you said, nobody can lone wolf it. You're stronger if you have a tight community, your neighbors, the people in your surrounding area. You have a network of trade and supply and people that can help you out if you need it. So we need to build not only building ourselves up is a given. We all agree there, but we need to start building more communities. And for in a lot of libertarian circles, that's sort of a bad word. It makes people we don't need communities, we need individualism. And to me, in our current paradigm, the only way to achieve individualism is through community, actually. Because we have this overarching power structure known as the state, if we are sort of atomized individuals on like our own separate little islands, we are actually we are more subjected to the state. We're more vulnerable to the state. But if we build ourselves communities, we can more protect our individuality, which seems counterintuitive at first. When I first say that, it seems like that doesn't make sense. But I think that is the only way to achieve individuality and autonomy is through having these decentralized communities in your local area and spread out further, and networks that exist outside of the state. Because if it's just us, if it's just me and my family alone on an island, I'm much more vulnerable to the coercion and violence of the state than I would be if I had tight-knit relationships with my neighbors and like-minded people in my area.
Yeah, I just want to butt in. That that it limits the kind of projects that we're able to do. But I think that if we're completely atomized individuals, but I think what we aim for is like the synthesis. It's actual communities. It's like I think what we aim for is the best of both worlds on that. I think it's way better than like this super hyper individualistic thing and the communalist thing. I think we actually kind of people that think like us actually hit the mark on what actual like cooperation, competition, all that stuff's supposed to mean. So that's what we're all about here. I don't know if I'm sure you agree. I see your taxation is theft and war is murder shirt. Yeah. Yes, very good.
Nice.
Loving it.
Yeah, I not to say that you have to create like an intentional community. Everybody's got to be in one location. And I've been following Stefan Verstappen for a little while here, and he's got this new course, The Complete Guide to Forming Communities. And we've already talked in our Freedom Cell group that we're going to take that course together. But, in some of the podcasts that he's talked about, there's several ways that you could form this, like as a, mutual aid network and, trade networks and basically decentralized communities where, just as I've been describing, is that everybody's got their own piece of land, but, everybody has trust in each other, and you do things together. Like, you have barbecues and you get everybody together and you guys like either, help somebody do a project and, plant their garden out and, help them figure out how to do livestock, do basic preparedness stuff, which is a lot of the stuff that we've been doing is like solar, like how to set up your own solar power system, how to, be safe when you're using cryptocurrencies, because there's a lot of folks coming in to our meetings in our freedom cells that are, relatively new to the concept of cryptocurrency, even though they're in, the libertarian kind of philosophy communities. How to see. We did another one on uh, on food. On I went to the Rogue Food Conference and talked about doing buying clubs of local produce from local farmers and stuff like that. So we're trying to teach at every meeting we've been having is like asking the folks that are in the group if somebody wants to do a presentation on some kind of skill that they know, and take the first hour of the meeting to talk about the skill. And then recently we actually started to meet at one of our guys' properties so that we could actually start doing some training, weapons shooting and practice, dropping our magazines and being able to reload and do all that kind of stuff. And then we're going to probably take immediate action medical training from these guys over at Tactical Response in Camden, Tennessee, and get a group together and go do that so that we have some medical training between each other. And then we've been doing stuff with, we actually had a presentation on ham radio communication, and a few of us went to go get get licensed so that we can start communicating and start understanding it and actually be in practice so that, we'll be able to use it when the time comes.
So have you heard of something I'm getting into recently and I'm trying to figure out, it's a learning curve, is something called LORA, LoRa. So it's long range radio signal. Basically, it works through, it's a small little device that you can send text messages essentially through radio signal.
Yeah, I saw that you posted something about that in your Telegram.
Yeah. So I've been trying to figure that out, and you don't need a license, because the problem with ham is everybody can listen to what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, and you need a license, and screw you, I don't want to get a license. But it seems to me that for a small closed knit community, this might be the way to go. It's a tiny little circuit board with a screen, and you can either get another input device so you can actually send text messages with just that circuit board, or you can get an app with your phone. But it doesn't go through the internet. It doesn't go through the cell towers. Nothing. It's just device to
using
device.
The repeater network and sending data packets through.
Yep. And it's just sending text messages. So I think that's another cool idea.
That's
for anybody that's listening. I don't know much about it. I've been doing some research lately, and I bought a couple of them, and I just been trying to figure it out. That's the stage I'm at.
That's why I ended up just going ahead and getting my license, because I feel the same way you do. Like I don't need a license to communicate with people, but I wanted to be able to test some things out and learn from these other guys in these ham radio clubs, because they're, I think most of the time, like when folks get on that amateur radio and like talk to each other, they don't really give a problem about it. Like if you don't give your call sign or whatever, but if you're abusing it I think they can actually, like, there's been stories of them like triangulating your location.
They definitely can.
Yeah. So anyway,
Yep.
I'm trying to figure that out myself, and there are some tools. There was something that one of our guys was telling us about, was something a protocol called WinLink. And it depends on the radio that you buy. Like if you buy one of these newer radios that have a lot of these capabilities, like you can link up with these basically internet connections that are connected through the repeater network, and you can be able to do data packets without being noticed. So I believe, I haven't got into it myself yet, but
so from what I understand, and I'm by no means an expert, but You can actually send encrypted text messages through a ham radio, but it's actually illegal to do. But it can be done if you were in a situation where that was necessary. The legality of it might not matter to you,
Yeah.
but it's possible to send entirely encrypted text messages through. I think what you were saying, that through the computer, through the ham. And then nobody can read what you're saying. But don't get caught doing that, because that's like illegal under whatever not sedition, but some sort of War Powers Act from like World War II. So you can't
Really?
Yeah. You can't.
Want to be
I know
smart about it.
Cryptography.
Yeah.
Well, I know cryptography has always been considered a weapon.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that we have the access to it we do, because I think it's kind of slipped out of the state's hands a little bit, because it's kind of ridiculous considering cryptography the same as like a nuclear fissile material or something. But yeah, that's basically how they see it. And so I think that's why we do have to guard cryptography as much as we can, and really get ourselves like, I haven't done a good job keeping up with like cryptography, how to do PGP, how to do it on Linux, because that's what I run here. And I think it's something that we should all do. For one thing, to understand basic crypto technologies, like how encrypted messages works, how to check hashes on like files you're installing, and obviously cryptocurrency, to actually know how the tech works. Because I think a huge number, I think what separates us kind of liberty types from regular people is, when it comes to cryptocurrency, are we interested in the technology and its implications and stuff, or is it just a thing that goes up and down in value? But that being said, like, it takes a pretty good effort to understand exactly how these technologies work. But you mentioned you were kind of helping people out and getting people kind of getting their feet wet with crypto. So are you finding that people are still, even right now, just kind of enthusiastic about getting into crypto and familiarizing? You always hear from the kind of homesteady libertarian types, like, well, that cryptocurrency won't be worth anything when the grid goes down and when the internet gets shut off and everything. And then my response to all those things, no matter what it is, and that's like the biggest argument, that's like the biggest example, but what if it doesn't? I mean, I don't see the entire internet go. Then we're screwed. We're really screwed if the whole internet gets shut down.
That's what I tell folks is, like, man, we gonna have bigger fish to fry, because we're gonna have to come up with seashells or something for money or something, to be able to. We're gonna have to do something else, but as long as we got the internet, man, I mean, it's gonna be the next way we use money, in my opinion, or be able to exchange value with each other.
So there's several different ways of looking at that, and I've been a prepper for a long time, and I've made the exact argument you made, Penguin. And so it depends on what level of collapse we're talking about. If we're talking about an economic collapse and hyperinflation, then crypto will be just fine. But if we're talking about a full-on societal collapse, like a grid down, shit hits the fan scenario, crypto is not going to be. You're going to be worried about other things than crypto, right? So, like you said, we'll be trading in ammo and tobacco and food and medical supplies. We don't have to worry about. So some of these crypto guys are like, well, we can send crypto over like some radio signals and this and that. I'm like, listen, you don't know what you're talking about. In a situation like that, we're not going to be worried about trying to send our crypto over radio signals. We're going to be worried about food, water, shelter, medicine, ammo. Like, that's going to be what we're worried about. And at that point,
maybe later, once things start to stabilize, you might start playing with that stuff. But.
Exactly. It'll be years down the road once things sort of like are stable, like you said. But immediately, it's going to be gold, silver, medical supplies, liquor for sure, but food, so
cigarettes.
Right. So you wanna prepare for both things, for both eventualities. Like, I'm not saying don't use crypto. I think it's awesome. It's going to be great to circumvent things and to prevent inflation. But if
So
you're worried about a grid down scenario, a shit hits the fan scenario, then also stack up other things that are tangible goods.
yeah, and
That
you
like
know what I tell people is, if you're gonna get started, just get started. Put a little bit of after you paid all your bills or whatever, start putting a little bit into it, and you can use that and take some profits from it. I would tell them to, like, get some Bitcoin first, and learn how to use that and keep it safe, and then hold on to it, and then at some point you could use it to fund a project or something like that, but like at least know how to use it. And
Yeah, and when you said profit, I think the best way to look at that is that if you, and I know this stuff goes up and down, but if you get it and it appreciates in value, it's not just profit. You can think about it, it's your reward for like being part of the earlier you're involved with it, the more potential reward you can get for being part of it. And Bitcoin and crypto is only a thing if we use it as individuals and then we exchange it with other people, right? So like if you profit off of like it appreciating in value, and I mean you could lose money too, obviously, especially if you try to be an investor, a day trader, but like think of it as your reward for being part of the network and participating in this whole thing early on, because we're still early on in crypto. I mean, it's going to be a thing. It's not going to go away. They're going to try to capture it with the state as much as possible, but you can't capture the idea of what Satoshi laid out in his white paper. So I think if people have an idea, like not only is what is crypto, as I just can't stand when people just know about it as an investment vehicle. What do you know about it as a technology? What are you investing in? Like you're investing in a future, or we don't have to have middlemen between us. And I mean, when you think about all the things that have been invented that have had, I don't think you've ever had anything that major ever invented that was intentionally invented with that kind of liberatory, aspect built into it from the beginning. Obviously, because most inventions don't have like a white paper exactly that explains how and why and what the motivations are. But it's this from the beginning, and I think it's really sad when people hear about cryptocurrency and kind of get into the space without caring anything about that. That's a huge part of what the whole deal is about. And I think I don't expect I've never read any white paper of any crypto, but like I think they should at least get a synopsis. Like this is what this is what it can do, and if you hold some and you send some, etc., you're part of that.
yeah,
so
one of the things that put a light bulb in my head at one point was like, the IRS can go into your bank account and be able to withhold your paycheck and going into your bank account and everything. Well, they can't do that with your crypto currency wallet. They have to have your private key, and so it cannot be confiscated in the way that they currently confiscate property from people. So that's something to think about, is that when you hold that private key, it cannot be confiscated unless somebody's holding a gun to your head. And then there's different ways of getting around that too. Like I know of some, I believe like on the Trezor, and I think the Ledger has it as well. There's like an additional seed phrase that unlocks your full wallet, but you can give them the other minus that word, and it only unlocks a certain amount. So like there's ways to get around the coercion as well.
cool.
So.
That's very cool. Yeah. I didn't know that. So 2 points I wanted to make about what you guys were just saying is, so you mentioned people that are just getting into the crypto space just because it's an investment and they don't really care about it being a liberatory tool or decentralized money. They just see it as an investment. And then I wanted to tie that back into something you mentioned about Greg, about the Soviet Union and how people were just trading mostly because they just needed to, or it benefited them in some way.
Yeah.
Even so what I see, what Konkin would call these people is sort of unconscious agorists, unconscious counter economists. So they weren't doing counter economics for the same reason the three of us would, in the sense that we want to circumvent the state and build an alternative society and economy. They're just doing it simply because it benefits them. So in the Soviet Union, if you wanted rock and roll records, so you had to go to the black market and get your rock and roll records. You weren't necessarily thinking that this was going to resist the state. You just wanted rock and roll records. Now, I actually think that this plays to our this is a strength that plays to our own end goals. So these people might not necessarily agree with us philosophically, but they are benefiting us in terms of materially, in terms of our self-interest. So they are participating and acting in these markets purely for non-ideological reasons, just because they want to benefit themselves in some way. But this also helps us prop up these markets and helps more people in. It helps that the more people being in these markets helps us in terms of sheer volume, so we have somewhere to go, and there's more people in there, so we have somewhat of a anonymity, and also, it creates it's the network effect. It creates more people, so these things work smoother for us who would use them for counter economic purposes. Now, that being said, that's the trend that I see happening now. So you mentioned like the Agenda 2030 and the 21 Agenda 21, and the COVID regime, and also just the general trend towards authoritarianism. And it's something that I say, it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. So the state is crushing down on all of us, but the three of us can notice a lot of positive things that are occurring, maybe because the state is crushing down on us, but people are moving away from, like, I'll give you an example. People are moving away from the cities. They don't have any faith in the sort of the system anymore. They don't have faith in supply chains. Whatever the reason is, it's not necessarily that they're anarchists, but there's a general shift in culture that people are moving towards more counter economic, relationships, and more, they want a more rural living. They are moving away from the system simply for self-interested reasons. Do you see this as, do you see, number one, do you see that shift that I do? And number two, do you see the benefit in this? And do you think it's necessary that these people are philosophically aware? Does it really matter? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm from an area that's predominantly conservative, and a lot of the conservatives that I know are really questioning a lot of stuff about the government. And I guess one example is a buddy of mine that raises a bunch of sheep, and he sent some of his sheep to be processed by a USDA processor, and they sent like his a lot of that meat back, and it was all tainted. Well, that was about $30,000 worth of meat that was tainted, and he went through this whole process with the USDA. They sent an inspector and all this stuff, and said that it was fine. And so, then the processor also is putting a lawsuit on him. And so anyway, those guys are starting to, really question a lot of the stuff about how they need to be a good upstanding citizen, because they're entrepreneurs, and, they're trying to make a business work. And so, he's one example in, they're working on different ways for solutions on how to get around all that kind of stuff. And, I've been talking to them about different solutions and like creating this food church that I learned about through the Rogue Food Conference. And anyway, it's basically a way to create yourself a legal protection. You either do it through that or you create like a private membership club. So you would be able to pay on a regular basis, and it would be a private membership that takes it out of the public realm, so that now you're not interacting with the public. You're in the private, and you are basically only selling to those members. And there's different ways you can do it. So I've been talking to them about ideas like that, and they seem more receptive to it now, especially the things that they've encountered with troubles with the state, dealing with the state. And so, they're more receptive to it. That's all I can say. But everybody, anybody that's done sold something at a yard sale or anything like that, like you said, they are interacting in the counter economy, but they don't really realize it. And yeah, I have friends that I would consider like in that conservative realm that are, moving towards they're seeing everything that's going on with all these lockdowns and what's happened in the past year, and they are looking for solutions. And I think it is, the folks in our community that, see a possible way out of this, that, we can be we can, walk the walk. If we're walking the walk and, taking actions to move things in a different direction, then they can look at what you're doing and say, hey, I want to do some of that as well. So I think that's just the evolution of authoritarianism. Like, the more the state becomes authoritarian, the more people want to find solutions, and the more resentment they have towards the state. And so, yeah, I think it's a good thing that the state seems to be going for broke right now and trying to get everybody, poked, and, and, it seems like they're going all out. And I think that only helps folks to, search for alternatives.
Yeah. I'm going to bounce something off you real quick. You mentioned, and we generally as liberty types are going to mention kind of things along an authoritarian to libertarian axis, authoritarian to anti-authoritarian. And certainly people are wanting to react badly to authoritarianism, maybe not like on an ideological basis where they oppose all authoritarianism, but it's always going to, a certain amount of authoritarianism is always going to rub somebody the wrong way, especially when it inconveniences them and causes them some kind of loss. But you mentioned the conservatives in your area, and I think the idea of who's a conservative, who's a progressive, who's this left, right, and this and that is not only amorphous, but it's really in flux right now. So I don't know if those words even mean anything right now. So let's look at it this way. We're talking about real people. I think what people are seeing is not necessarily, because there's a lot of what we call authoritarianism. A lot of people think is, totally fine. One man's authoritarianism is other man's, community coming together. But I think what rubs up against people is this centralization. Like, some people are just not going to like this centralization of power. Some of us is just going to want decentralization. And a lot of times our types end up calling that freedom. But another way of saying freedom is almost like decentralization of power. Now, you might want a pretty extreme decentralization of power. And the whole idea of what kind of economic system we want, even, it's not so much that there's people advocating for capitalism. What's that? Or socialism? Believe me, there's about 100 different definitions of each. But it's like there are people that want centralization and put their faith in that. And there's people like us that want decentralization, and there's a whole lot of us that don't want to be part, don't want to be part of that centralized power structure to kind of be dependent on others. And that doesn't mean we don't want to interact with others, but we don't want to be dependent on, not even dependent on others, but dependent on others as like a collective. You know what I mean? Where I don't know, power, authority, and planning is centralized and it's taken all out of our hands. We could have you could have a very strong community where it's in the hands of the people that's in the community. So the real thing I see going forward is not so much liberty, authority, or right and left, or fascism or socialism or capitalism and communism. It's centralization versus decentralization, and that explains it, I think, better when you see who's expressing interest in what now.
Yeah, I mean, my background is in engineering, and when you look at a system, the more complex a system is, the more points, the more points of failure you have. And when you go to, a simpler system, the less, the less points of failure that you're going to have in that system. So right now, our human system is like this crazy machine with all these, gears and things, linkages that have to work in just the right way for everything to keep on humming along. And, that's a very fragile thing to, one little part of that system goes down, the whole thing goes like a domino effect. And so if you have a lot of these smaller, just like you said, the decentralization of power, that, you have these little communities that are able to handle stuff on their own, that's much, much simpler, at least to be able to go to the person that's next door, and or whoever that you have that you've decided to come together and decide on some kind of legal system or structure, rules between each other. It's easier to go to those people and raise issues than to be able to handle this huge machine.
Yeah, I think people are really, really capable, and there's a lot of people out there that don't have faith in this. But humans are really, really capable in handling affairs. And the thing is, in their immediate area, we can handle family, we can handle communities, and there's no group of people in this country that can't handle their affairs locally to some extent. And to that same extent, I think what you're getting at is like there's no one that can centrally plan things on the scale that we try to do it in this country. And the higher of a level you try to central plan things, the more people there are that fall through the cracks in the sense of getting screwed over. And that number of people like add up over time. Because, it's like the more people you try to cram through the same shaped hole, the more people are going to, I don't know where this analogy is going, but are going to be like really dissatisfied with that system.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like a one size fits all solution, and nature, the universe doesn't work that way, in my opinion. It's like a self-learning. It's like a self-learning system of continuous complexity, and I'm myself.
Complexity.
Yeah. I mean, the systems, our biological systems. I read a cool book by Rupert Sheldrake called Morphic Resonance, and in that book, he's talking about like how you can observe what they call epigenetics, which is like small changes from one generation to another. So, like one of the examples in the book was the fruit fly might build an adaptation in the mother where they have these spikes to prevent like a certain predator from attacking them. And then the next generation, based on this information from the environment, basically, it gets encoded into the next generation to have more pronounced spines. And so that's what the biological systems on this planet are doing, and probably all over the universe, is that it's a feedback mechanism of environmental information to increase and adapt to new changes in environment for life to continue forward.
Yeah, complexity is really important, because I think the one thing that the state does, I mean, I just try to I come to the same conclusions as, and I come to the same way as a lot of people, but I also come to the same conclusions as a whole lot of people, and try to come to them from different ways. So complexity totally didn't come up with this on my own. So credits to all the people that do work like this. But like one thing the state wants to do, and any authoritarian wants to, that's basically the state wants to do, is to like simplify the complexity of human society. I mean, this is basic like Moose's, and this goes down to people that I actually really want to have on the podcast. But the world is a complex place of vastly interconnected people. We're all interconnected, and the state wants to simplify that complexity. And like I said, the more you try to do that, the more people are going to be falling through the cracks. So the non-authoritarians of us, or the decentralists, decentralists, and I don't even know which label we want to have. We're both. I would think all three of us, like, we don't care about grasping and understanding all that complexity. We want to just let the market happen as it does, handle our own local end of it. And, unfortunately for some people, they're in a mindset is, how do you handle this or that? It's, when you give people the answer, we'll figure it out. It sounds like really trite, but I mean, people figure things out. They have through since the beginning of time, and that's what we do right here. That's what you guys do in the Freedom Cell. That's we have all the world's knowledge available to us at our fingertips, and we can talk to anybody all over the world. Look what we're doing right here. Like, I guess my whole idea of why I'm so freedom oriented is because we have the tech and like the abundance around us to have so much, even though like we're pretty comfortable. We're more comfortable than anybody's ever been any time in history, no matter who you were, with what we have right now. But it could be so much better if we didn't have kind of some of these change, this change from a bygone era holding us back.
I agree 100%. And, there's so much technology out there now that can help you produce more abundance. You got these like little farm bots that you could deploy and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, on the other hand, you have, the technology moving in such a direction to like constantly be spying on us and all this stuff. So, but basically that's part of my philosophy, and why I started my podcast was that it's going to be the entrepreneur in the backyard inventor, innovator that's going to push the direction of the world in a more positive direction. You got guys like Ben Peterson that created something called the Waste Bot, and he builds wood gas fires. And then you got guys like Marcin Jakubowski that does open source ecology, that's building all these open source designs for everything. And it is our ability to exchange information using the internet that we can, be able to work together and cooperate on a massive scale using open source engineering. Basically using open source design and engineering, you've created a world potential full of minds that can maybe take an idea and build on that idea, and keep continuously improving it and being able to put that out, just like the open source coding and software. We can do that with hardware. And you mentioned Carl Hess a while ago. I haven't read his book, but I listen to a lot of podcasts and people have talked about him. But I think what what I've heard is the Carl Hess was talking about something where you have like local factories or whatever, so that like that area could be like a maker space, basically, where you have all these like folks could have access to the tools. And that's how a makerspace operates, is that, you know, you become a member of the makerspace. You do like a monthly dues or whatever. It goes into like, you know, keeping tools and stuff maintained, but you get access to all the tools and everything to help build your projects and stuff like that. So, that's why I'm very optimistic, because there are a lot of the technologies, a lot of these guys that are doing cool stuff out there. You know, that's why I try to promote and tell people about these things, because if they know about them, and then it's a big opportunity for folks like us to be able to provide a product or a service to people out there, where we see that there's a lack in the above board, the white economy of that's all tracked, traced, and database. You know, if we can provide something to the folks out there in the world that will benefit using some of these technologies, you know, then you know, we're going to be able to create opportunities for ourselves and using the market out there. So it is through market action, is you know, Adam Smith said the invisible hand, where we self-organize and be able to you know, fill in the gaps where there's you know, less supplies of something here, then, you know, that creates an opportunity for somebody to start an agri business of some kind and keep, you know, more of that energy away from the state.
Yeah, and so you mentioned market, and I mentioned market once too, and I think it's important to realize that all the stuff we've talking about, like as far as SEC and I are concerned, all those things are the market. Like all those things, the mutual aid, the sharing of open source information, everything that's not like, I mean, you have central planning in markets too. That's what we have in kind of the system that we have today, whatever you call it, the corporate system. But all the stuff that we described is the market. However you decide to exchange things, however you decide to organize things, it's the market. I guess the market versus what the centrally planned, the hierarchy, the top down,
all the regulations.
All the which is a regulation's a tax. A regulation's a tax. We charge you for this information. We charge you for this permission to do this with these resources. We charge you a licensing fee. We charge you all that stuff. And you know, I was just reading the last, you know, 10 or 15 pages of Neighborhood Power by Carl Hess, and like 79, 80 around that time. He did, to the best of his ability, he predicted like all this stuff. He predicted what we're doing right now and what you're talking about, people like in one factory, video conferencing with people in another factory. It's just kind of sharing information, totally open source about like stuff that they've come up with themselves on the worker level. And you know, when you one thing about Hess is, we know he's a big name in libertarian anarchists, and I think a really underrated name in libertarian anarchism. But when you read his idea of even to me, but even with all the stuff we talked about, it comes off as very, very communalist. And we're individualists. How do you square that? And I think you square it really well, because in a world kind of where we somehow eliminated all the structures that you and I and Sec and all of our listeners would love to get rid of. I think we live in a world with a lot less conflict in the things that we have to like mitigate conflict. So like police, so like you know, surveillance, bosses and authority in general. And sure, you can go work for somebody, you can have a boss. I have no problem with that. But it's also, that's a way of that we have as a society to try to deal with like the issues that we have and the conflicts that come into place, different people's motivations in the market, in the workplace. You got to keep your workers disciplined and so forth. You've got to keep people. You have police to maintain order and to make sure that these kind of people don't take from that. And I think I think when we come back to the scale of like centralized power, the problems I think we see is that we try to scale these ideas that might have been kind of good ideas, representative democracy. I mean, look what came before it, monarchy and so forth. We try to scale these things up way, way, way bigger than they can possibly be effectively scaled. And that's why Hess was all about localism 100%. And I know some people say try to look at things differently, and they've got to say things have definitely got to be able to scale. You're just not. But most of these things that we can think of to organize things amongst ourselves, they just can't be scaled up that high, and that's just a limitation of us as human beings. But that doesn't mean we're like inwardly focused. Like he was talking about video conferencing somebody in Sweden, one factory to another, and they're sharing their techniques for creating things, totally open source. Nobody's charging anybody for anything. And you're totally like open-minded and open to everyone, cosmopolitan, all of that. But as human beings, we operate best on a certain scale. And when you get beyond that scale, you just can't have that much control of what goes on. There's a certain size of networks we have, but those networks can network, and those larger networks can network and we have the technology to do that. So right now, I think the systems of like centralized power and authority, they're like anachronisms to me. Would you agree with that? I mean, are we? I don't want to like build us up, but are we on the cutting edge of just like how things are going to have to be in the future?
Well, well, the way things are going, I think that's why they want a population that does not critically think and is not creative, and they've done this through the public education system and a lot of that stuff, and I believe it's why they're pushing us into this technocratic future where everyone is surveilled all the time. They want to give you some kind of biometric identification, possibly this whole idea of transhumanism where you get technology into the body. Who's to say once that technology is in the body they can't hack into you like you could hack into anything that's connected to the internet or whatever. So I think that's the direction that they, them, those, the powers that should not be is what I like to call them. They want to take our future into. And so what's the alternative? In my opinion, the only alternative is to be liberty or death, basically, because the alternative is not worth living in that future, in my opinion. And if we do remain and go in the opposite direction and utilize these tools that we have currently available with technology, we can outdevelop the state. And I don't know if there ever be a future without a state. There will be probably some version of a state, but you can so severely weaken it that it's effectively non-existent, in my opinion. So I feel like, if we push in the direction of staying human and using the technology as a way to benefit ourselves and help us build abundance and outdevelop these guys by understanding that when we share ideas and cooperate, we can outpace the development of any of these companies that are doing things through their own little corporations and trying to keep their intellectual property to themselves and not be able to get that out to other people. So I feel like we're kind of on a precipice of, we could go that way or we could go this way, which is going to be like crazy sci-fi awesome abundance future. You know.
Dude, that's what we need to go back to, man. I was just saying, like, libertarianism libertarians have kind of moved to, and I don't mean to say that, dude, I would love to live on a homestead in the woods, and I'm so glad that y'all can do that, and I hope to do that in the future. But libertarianism's moved real to that, like, agrarian homestead thing, and we need a balance. We need to go back to the sci-fi, because the sci-fi, Konkin, I think all those guys, they were huge sci-fi nerds. They were like futurists, and they had so much hope for what, like, the future and technology, and like where the way society could go. And you never know what the time scale is on that. We could totally see that stuff, but and there's so much about the world that's happened since industrialization and onwards that we want to go back to, like, a more idyllic, simple life in some ways. But we also got to have that vision for the future, because, like, some of these technologies that we talk about all the time on this show, like cryptography, like 3D printing, like just things that allow technologies to scale down to the individual level, so you can make stuff just like you do. You know what I mean? That stuff's not possible without innovation level technology that we have now. And the whole idea is that, like, yes, they might want to make it to, I try not to use the they like that, but you know what I mean. They want you to ask for permission, and you got to be able to say, this is like permissionless technology. You can get 3D printers that can make 3D printers at some point. And that's the point where you get to, like, basically a singularity, you know? So yeah, you can wait and ask for permission to see if you get it. But, like, we're increasingly getting to, like, permissionless technology and permissionless innovation. And after that, it's like asking permission is just a formality, that it can't be enforced.
So to put
Absolutely.
what you guys are saying very simply, the reason those, the powers that should not be, exist is because we have, and I've said this before many times, and I'm borrowing from Carl Hess here, but we have outsourced our relationship with production. So we have granted all of these people, those in power, control over production of these, well, technologies, supply chains, all of these things. And we have just become passive consumers rather than producers. So everything would change at the flip of a light switch if we changed our relationship with production. So if we were, like you said, if we were developing our own technologies, our own goods and services, all of those things, their control would cease to exist, because we would have, like you said, these permissionless technologies, these open source things. We would outcompete them sheerly through innovation, and their power would diminish, if not cease to exist at all. And it all boils down to, Konkin's great in his writings about agorism and counter economics, but I almost think Carl Hess puts it even simpler and much more concise and simple terms. It comes down to production. So the reason Google and Lockheed Martin and all of these things, and Amazon and Bezos and Bill Gates and whoever the bad guy you want to point to, the Rothschilds, whoever you want to point to, the reason they exist is because we as humans have outsourced production to these people. We have granted our power to these people. We have given it away. So if we just start gaining control over production once again, these people, I don't want to say they'll cease to exist, but they become irrelevant.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter anymore what they're doing. We've already have everything that we possibly need, and we're producing everything that we need amongst ourselves. And so that is where their power lies, is the control of resources and production.
Yeah.
So sorry, that was just that's a very, and I get that from Carl Hess, and I say that a lot, and I don't think people realize just like the importance of just how simple and concise that really is, because that's everything. That is the root of everything that we're dealing with.
Yeah, and that reminds me of what I learned from the Yainomi Park was that she realized at some point she was very angry against the regime that kept the people in such horrific conditions. But she said at one point she realized that the people had done this to themselves. They decided to give over their power to, a daddy government figure, the state that was going to be able to take care of them and, offload their own decision making to someone else. And we've done the same thing. So it's like we can't really blame other people. There seems to be a plan in motion, and a lot of folks, I think, have been hoodwinked through our upbringings. I think human beings are programmable beings. It's like, you don't just be born. You're not just born and you know all the things that you need to know. You're born and you learn through mimicry, and you learn through everything, all the other folks around you, how to be able to survive in the world. And we have to learn and deprogram ourselves, just like you're saying, to be net producers instead of just consumers.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And you mentioned the public schools and how we've been acculturated by different institutions like the public schools. And it's like when you say what they did with the public schools, I think you're going to get a different reaction from a lot of people. People aren't like us. They don't realize that when public schools were put into place, they were put into place under the same system that we have now. It was made to make us disciplined and to not foster discipline and not foster critical thinking and stuff. And when we some people say on our side say stuff about corporate structure or capitalism, and they say, well, what they've done by regulating it, and we said no, they've been putting their fingers on the scale one way or another from the beginning. That's how these things were created, whatever you want to call the system. But there's always been a powers that be, and there was a powers that be before we had elected officials. We had kings, we had monarchs, and there's always been a powers that be. There's always, these structures have generally always been flawed structures, even when they were better than the ones before them. And I think we're overdue for a big shift. And when that shift is about to happen, what I think is all the structures that are in place and the people that are comfortable in those are going to want to, for their own individual reasons, they're not necessarily see the big picture, but they're going to want to hold back that change. And I think the nature of this technology is that it really is harder than ever, because we're talking about producing on like this individual level in the garage. It's harder than powered by electricity, which can be created off the grid if necessary. And schematics for everything can be obtained on your phone in an instant and everything. And the nature of technology and communication is basically like they can't stop it. So, and ultimately, the march of history, like certain movements from one paradigm to another, eventually happen. But like on the individual level, you might be stuck where you just will never see whatever you start coming to fruition. But for us, it's like on the individual level, we can overcome whatever barriers are put in our way. And I think that's why people like us, like minds, people that want to create and take control of that production, I definitely recommend everybody. Carl Hess is still totally valid, but follow our podcast, learn skills, get involved, follow other people in these spaces, and people that are making, people that are working in chemicals and biochemistry that we've talked to, people that make 3D printed firearms that we haven't gotten somebody that's famous in that space on the show yet, but I think most of our listeners are going to know about that and have listened to some interviews and whatnot. But find people, exchange information with them, support people in what we do, get the word out, and don't try to beat them at. I don't have to really say this to people that know, but like, don't try to beat them at the same game. We don't. You've said open source. This whole concept. We don't engage in intellectual property. We're not in these things for profit. We're not creating corporations, except for as mere formalities sometimes if we're in the white market. But we're not creating corporations. We're not trying to gatekeep this information, and that's not like so ideological, like left wing or socialist or capitalist, whatever. It is. It's just kind of what we do, it's not ideological.
Well, you did say one thing. I mean, well, me personally, I don't hate money. So I mean, like if there's a way that I could provide value to someone else, like by teaching them how to do some of these things, by offering them a workshop where they could come and learn some of these things and get hands on, then I want to do that. I want to provide that to others, provide value to others, and be able to put that into other projects, and keep continually being able to build my own tools and infrastructure to make this sci-fi future come to fruition. So personally, I think you should look for any opportunities in the market to be able to create some kind of entrepreneurial venture of some kind, and just start to be able to provide value to others, because through providing value to others is how we're able to actually advance and continuously improve on our technologies and being able to outpace the state, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can tell you're an Adam Smith fan. That's exactly what we're trying to do, man. We're trying to provide for others, and we build prosperity for providing to others.
That's I see a discrepancy where you guys are talking about two different things. Peg, when you mentioned profit, and when you mentioned that you were talking about like economic rents through an intellectual property, so he thought you meant like gaining revenue at all. I think that's where there was a confusion there for a second.
And then Mises, I didn't even catch on to that. But yeah, Mises would say anything you're doing to get back. Yeah, we would say anything you get back. But I'm saying, when you gatekeep information and charge somebody a license and everything. But we're not we're not in that mindset. We're trying to build. We're trying to build us up.
Actual value.
And
right.
Yeah, and it's not a zero sum. We're not building us up to bring anybody down.
Right.
And I think in the kind of abundance of the world that we're talking about, where we actually have control of our production, I think a big theory that you've put forth a bunch, Sec, is that in the kind of abundance in the world that we'd have, these things wouldn't be an issue. We wouldn't need to, put up the fence and put up the barbed wire and fiercely guard our intellectual property and our land and stuff, and just be a constant war, because we'd have too much abundance to have to worry about that kind of thing.
Yeah, a free market would create so much abundance that there would be less conflicts, just because everybody has so much stuff. There's not a scarce mindset anymore, to where you have, like, if I can 3D print my house on land that I homesteaded, and I can 3D print cars in my garage, all of these things, like theft just wouldn't be even a thing, because everybody has so much of everything. That's what the free market would create, to where it's not technically post scarcity or anything, but people wouldn't be in that sort of scarce dog eat dog mentality, because there's so much sheer abundance. And that would also mean less conflict overall. If I just printed 10 cars in an afternoon, those cars are worth very little to me because it didn't cost me very much to make them. And if everybody has just more than they could possibly need, there's there's a lot less reason for conflict. Now, humans will always find a reason for conflict, but it won't be over resources and trying to eat and put food on the table, because there'd just be so much of everything that um, people would cooperate and share, and everyone would have, or most people would have, everything they could possibly want or need. So we would find another reason to fight over things, but it would not be over resources in a free market, because it would create that much abundance. Anyway, we got to start wrapping this up because, so you guys mentioned, so one thing I want to make clear, because it kind of goes into what we're saying, is we won't see this in our lifetime. Like, maybe, but I doubt it. But what I say a lot of the times is, it's not me you got to worry about. It's my sons and daughters you got to worry about. They're the ones that are coming for them. So what we're doing, to put it very realistically, is we're building the foundation for the generations that come after us.
Yeah.
In terms of our relationship with production. And that's actually part of the reason we got to wrap this up, because I got to go spend some time with my kids.
Right on.
Right. But, somebody mentioned this earlier. This is a generational war we're fighting. So it's not going to happen. The state is 9,000 years old. It's not going, we're not going to end it probably even in our lifetimes. So that's not to say that there's no hope. That's to say that it's going to
be a continuous struggle.
Yes, that's to adjust our goal to something more effective. We can start building the foundations for ourselves and our children now, no problem. And it's going to benefit us in the immediate future in our own lives. And it's also going to build the foundation, so our children and their children can continue to build this society that we want to see.
Okay, to close things out, I want to ask you both guys a question based on what you just said a sec. Do you think that, even though you said the state's 9,000 years old and so on and so forth, but do you think that we are kind of building on what I was saying a little earlier? Do you think we are in a place that's kind of unique, where we've reached a point where that's different than other other transitory periods in history? Or do you think with technology mostly in this society and the way we're all interconnection through the internet and whatnot, we kind of do have a global consciousness, and it's not like a forced, top-down global consciousness, just to clarify. But do you think that we're in that unique place, or do you think that just like any other time, there's like, it's not special, and the technology could be just as, it could support authority just as much as it could support decentralization. So you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. So not to be too deterministic, but I think the state we will eventually reach, we, meaning humanity, will eventually reach a stateless society. But I think there is these transitional periods and these cycles that humanity continues to go through. And we're in one of those times. We're in a transitional period. But every one of these cycles we go through, I think we get closer and closer to a stateless society. So yes, you're right in the sense that we are in a unique period, at least in terms of our lifetime, in the sense that we are in a transitional period. But these transitional periods have happened throughout history. But I think every cycle of these that we go through, we bring ourselves closer and closer to a state society. Now, I don't think this is necessarily unique, and I don't think that this one we're going through now is going to result in a stateless society even tomorrow, 5 or even 10, 50 years from now. But every time we go through one of these, more and more people sort of come to our side of things, or we lay down more of a foundation for the next transitional period, the next cycle. So you're right in that yes, what you're observing is a big transitional period. But no, I don't think it's going to result in a free society. And no, I don't think it's anything necessarily different. I think every generation or a couple generations, we go through something like this. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I think we are in part of a cycle. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a guy, Robert Anton Wilson.
Oh yeah,
But he had a good quote. I think he said something like, he defines himself as optimistic because optimistic people do things. And if you hold a pessimistic outlook on the future, pessimists don't get anything done. So I think, I remain an optimist, and I feel like that, just like Sek Magoro is saying, is that this is a multi-generational fight, and we are planting those seeds of trees that we may never enjoy the shade of. But we gotta keep that going, and we have to start, with our families, by having families, having children, and passing on these values and these core beliefs of personal responsibility and liberty and being a producer, so that next generation can carry things forward. And I don't necessarily know if we'll ever have a society of humanity without a state of some kind being in the way, but at least the state can be very, very, like I said, irrelevant. Like you see in Mexico, the state is there, but they really don't have much authority to do anything because they don't have very many resources to extend outwardly. So I think that's the goal, and just through using the counter economy to strip away the energy from the state until it becomes irrelevant is the best option that we have, and that's actionable things that we can be doing on a daily basis, improving our skills, learning how to be producers, looking for opportunities. One of the guys in chat, he said that what's the Star Wars quote? The more you tighten your grip. This is from Robbie Olson in the chat. The more you tighten your grip, the more the star systems will slip through your fingers. And so, that's what we're going through right now, is that the state is tightening its grip on the people. And just like you guys have been mentioning, is that more and more people will slip through their fingers and find their way and find us in searching for solutions. And that's our opportunity to be there to give them an alternative.
Penguin, how hilarious is that? How many times have I made that quote?
I was, oh, dude, it's more than one. We've definitely quoted that more than one. Yes, I mean that's an all-time great quote for the libertarian and anarchist types for sure. But yeah, I mean, I guess what we can say for sure is that we're in our place in history. It's not the beginning and it's not the end, and we're necessarily planting the seeds for like what comes next, and we'll never get credited for it because there's tons of people doing it in all sorts of ways, but like this is necessary for the next step, which is necessary for the next step, and so on. But I do think we're, like Zach said, in a transition period, and I'm excited to see where it goes, because clearly you see with a lot of what we're doing, I don't know. I see a lot of people changing their ideas, their dependence on planning authority, experts, technocrats, and top-down hierarchy, let's say. And when you do that, in not really a political way, you're not talking liberal and conservative. You're not talking parties. You're not talking like any of the conflicts that you see kind of really amplified in the media. And I don't think it's like, the powers that be want you to be distracted. I mean, they do, but I think people like that. I think people get like a little dopamine kick out of that kind of stuff, and they're kind of addicted to it. But like when you're talking on our level, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. When you're talking about on our level, you're talking
Taking action.
taking action. Yeah, you're talking about people actually reacting to what's going on in their surroundings, and kind of, that's what people do. People make economic decisions, but when you're unconstrained when you're unconstrained with the system, and even if like the thing that was constraining you is like your mindsets, in terms of like the counter economy, with like you want to necessarily do what's mainstream or easily convenient or easily supported, or in the white market, and that might not be what's convenient for you at a given time. There might be a supply chain disrupted. There might be, a lot of people worry about inflation and whatnot. And I think that long term, that is a big threat. There might be all sorts of inconveniences. And when you kind of get free of those constraints that are both like internal in your mind and external, I think we can make some real progress with people that don't necessarily have to share our other commitments.
Well, one thing that I'd like to add to what you said, Penguin, is that in my own life, I lesson learned from like I was talking about earlier, is that I think I wasted too much time trying to convince people, getting into arguments and stuff like that, when I should have been focusing on what I can do and what I can focus on myself to get me into a better position, so that I can walk the walk instead of trying to just tell people that they're stupid for not understanding or being able to figure this stuff out.
I think you got to where you are basically not through a bunch of theory. I'm sure theory was involved. It's great, but like you didn't get to like your commitments that you've talked about throughout this podcast through a bunch of theory. You came through doing it and working with other people. Your love from open source. Like, tell me if I'm wrong. Like, it's a great idea in theory, but when you're doing it and that's how you're gaining, and that's how you're sharing knowledge with other. I think it's far easier to get people into our mindset and kind of into this. I mean, I really think new era through doing, and not through trying to argue or convince or persuade anybody with what we can broadly call the theory.
Absolutely. I believe that's the ticket right there, is like, we got to focus on becoming as strong as possible and building those foundations ourselves, to be able to pass this on to others.
So let me just add one thing for you guys and everybody that's listening, right? So we're talking about a multi-generational war, right? But and laying the foundation for future generations. But here's the thing about sort of counter economics or self-reliance or individual production. They immediately benefit us. So like me producing things for myself or trading with my neighbors, they have an immediate material benefit. And this is why counter economics works, and why we have this is what we have on our side. Is the theory doesn't matter, and we're not doing a bunch of things for completely selfless reasons to build this foundation that we've been talking about. It also has an immediate material benefit to ourselves, like building up skills or building things with your hand or producing your own food. These have immediate benefit to ourselves and our families in our own lives. It could be saving money, getting better food, I'm trading with my neighbor and I'm getting better quality products, et cetera, et cetera. So this is why it works. Not only are we building a foundation for the future, but it's also benefiting us in the immediate right now in the here and now. The same thing with when you're talking about. Let me just finish this one point. The same thing we were talking about arguing with people online and calling them stupid. Like I've been in that situation. Here's the thing. Most people in the world are not going to be convinced by your logical argument or your theory. They're going to have to see it. And it's not that they're stupid. They're going to have to see it happen in action. So you going out and doing things is convincing people. So you going out and building these communities and these mutual aid networks and local farming and local gardening and community gardens and relationships, all of these things, you are actually going out and convincing people of these things. You're putting that theory into practice, which is what is going to convince most people. So that's what I'm saying is counter economics. It solves all of these problems all in one shot. It solves your material gain. It benefits you in the here and now. It builds this foundation, and you're also convincing people not through ideology or theory or arguments, but through actual actions. Like if the local people around you see that you guys are putting together this community garden, everything's working awesome. That's them seeing that theory in practice. So that is what's going to convince most people. So,
if anything, we're building an ideology from the practice of just doing things that make basic sense to us, that makes sense and benefit people in general, the vast majority of people, at least in general, where they are. And the ideology is coming, the very broad ideology is coming out of that.
Yeah, and I think it's important right now to find the like-minded folks around you, just like you guys are talking about, is like get to know your neighbors, find people that are of like mind, and start to support the folks that are producing something in some way in your local area. Probably the most important right now to be thinking about is food and how are you going to get good food. And, find those folks and see if you can help them out with projects and, try to learn farming techniques and stuff from them. If you're unfamiliar with it, work towards building your skills, maybe learn how to do some electronics, learn how to weld, learn how to, do some carpentry. Just try to build your skills as much as possible, because I think, in the future, during this period of where you guys are mentioning transition, things are going to be real chaotic, and you're going to need to be able to adapt to different situations quickly. So you're going to need to have some skills on your belt so that you can, be able to provide value to others as things get unstable.
Yeah, and even if they're not, I think the transition. Look, you can survive if by not doing that, by not building yourself up and making yourself available to others, but you're not going to be part of this transition. It's necessary. It's necessary to have the mindset to basically build your skills up and to engage in mutual exchange and with others. I mean, that's the only way to go forward, is that we're now able to kind of do that on an individual level. And I mean, a lot of criticism at technology, but technology allows that for sure. And what we're doing right now on open source free Jitsi, and your camera looks great and no lag, and I mean, come on now, we should be past the Jetsons by now, but anyways, man, it's been a great conversation. I'd love to have you back on to talk about like more specific tangible things and some of the ideas that we discussed earlier in the podcast. And even just brainstorming stuff for the future. Talk about real material projects that we're doing and people we know about doing and everything. It was a great conversation, though. It ran long as always, but honestly, definitely want to have you back and kind of expand on the stuff, the examples of what we actually talked about in the theory.
Yeah, this has been a great conversation, but we should have you back on and talk about more sort of
We say that to
practical
everybody.
application.
We
I
always
know
go
it.
so long on all this It's not really theory because we've been using theory as a pejorative this whole time, but like we talk about the big ideas, and we just there's so much many projects going on that we could really inform each other about, inform people about. So
Right.
we got to do that for sure.
I got a lot of the projects that I built there are on my blog. So if you want to go into some of that stuff, you can see some of my projects that I've worked on, and folks can kind of. I tried to almost make it like a technical step-by-step build guide when I was writing the blog. So
This is right out of Hess, dude. I just read this last night. That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
I did my best, but this basically it's there for anybody. It's open source. You can get an idea. You can improve on what I did. See what I did. Maybe you can make it cheaper, better, faster, stronger. So there you go.
Well, for everybody listening, go ahead and give out all your sites and social medias and all that kind of stuff.
All right, so my main blog is on Hive, and so you can find that by going to hive.blog/@makingstuff. You can find my YouTube channel, and it's one word, The Tinker Tribe, and follow me on Twitter at Greg Makes Stuff. And I really appreciate getting to talk to you guys tonight and have these discussions because it's a breath of fresh air. So,
yeah, man, this has been real good combo, and we'll definitely have to have you back on. This has been good. So
great.
Yeah, what you do is right up our alley. So I can't wait to have another convo, and gonna look into some more things. I don't know if you've heard about some of the guests that we've had on, but I think amazing things are on the horizon just in the next 5 years. So.
Yeah, I just was some of your guys' stuff is on Spotify and Anchor, and I just was able to get the Spotify thing downloaded, and so I started to listen to your guys' podcast. So you got a fan, man. I'm gonna be drilling through all your past episodes.
Well, I'm a fan of you, man, because I'm a little bit light in the praxis category. When I say praxis, I mean basically what you do, making stuff, So likewise, man. This is the mutual exchange of information, and hopefully we're providing value to all of our listeners and followers / fans, for sure. So thank you everybody for tuning in to the Greg's live stream, and then for tuning into our podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Agora_pod. Or you can just search for us, and we're the one with the penguin. I'm not the penguin. The raccoon is the avatar. Is a cute raccoon. So might distinguish us because I know there's other Agora podcasts apparently out there. We're the real one. But anyways, you can find us Anchor and Spotify. I think Apple Music as well, if you do the Apple Mac iPhone thing. So follow Greg's stuff. He streamed us live on YouTube, so you can find that on our Twitter. You can join the Discord. You can join our Telegram channel and contact Sec on the Telegram at Secmagora, SEKMCGORA, and you can find me on the Twitter, of course. Sec, do you have anything else to say before we go out? Any more announcements? Get our t-shirts, by the way.
Yeah, definitely get our t-shirts, and thanks to everybody on the live stream for listening. Come check us out too, and Greg, again, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, guys, thanks a lot for having me,
much.
and I'll make sure those links are down in the video description here as well.
Oh, awesome. All right, everybody, peace. We got to get going.
See you guys.
See you, man.
Have a great night. All right, guys. So that was a pretty awesome conversation there with the guys at the Agora podcast. I'll have all those links in the video description. And appreciate everybody that came and hung out for the live stream. This was kind of a test of being able to do this live streaming on YouTube. So appreciate everybody coming to hang out, and we'll see you guys on the next podcast.